Hello everyone, I welcome all of you to the discussion of the Gazette today for 6th July 2021. But before we start, you should understand that the discussion for the Gazette is divided into two videos. In the first video, we'll cover the featured news, and in the second video, the rest of the news that is covered in the Gazette. So let's begin with the table of content. So first of all, we have the featured news, and the news for today is the G20 and OECD inclusive framework, which was actually a framework on base erosion and profit shifting, which is a very important concept in economy. Then we have this day in history regarding Shyama Prasad Mukherjee, a contemporary of Jawaharlal Nehru and even the youngest vice chancellor of University of Calcutta. And he even started this Bharatiya Jansangh. And then we have news snapshot that is regarding FRET Smart Cities and NIPUN Bharat program, a very important program for the future of education in India. And then we have the image of the day regarding the solar flare, which we recently witnessed. And then there are some terms and concepts regarding Project Bold and Harit Dhara and special purpose acquisition companies, which India as of yet does not allow. And then we have editorials of the day. And we have three important editorials. In these three important editorials, the first important editorial is how the leaders need to display both grit and grace to beat the crisis of, whether it be of COVID-19 or other such crises in the future. Then we have the evolution of India's pragmatic policy on foreign aid. That means how India has evolved its policy on foreign aid. Before 2003, India used to accept foreign aid from these countries, which actually had an impact on the foreign policy stance of the government. But now India, after 2003 and after the position paper was launched in 2008, India has stopped taking foreign aid unless it comes through the route of NGOs and United Nations. And then we have zoonotic diseases, how we have seen from the past few years an increase in the zoonotic diseases, and it is actually, there is written a neglected public and planetary health frontier. It's an important concept we should focus on to stop the future crisis. And then there is an important case study regarding an innovative example to combat desertification, which we have recently seen in Eriteria, which was a country in Africa. Let's begin with this day in history with Shyama Prasad Mukherjee. So on July 6th, Shyama Prasad Mukherjee was born. He was actually a barrister, an academician, and even a politician. At age 33, you should know that he became the youngest vice chancellor of the University of Calcutta, and he even held office till 1938. And then we have seen that he was also the part of the Ministry of Industry and Supply in Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru's cabinet. So he was a cabinet minister for industry and supply in Prime Minister during the reign of Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru. Right? He also founded Bharatiya Jansangh in 1951, which is actually a predecessor of Bharatiya Janata Party. So he is actually the founder of Bharatiya Jansangh, which was a predecessor of BJP. And then we have some important news snapshots. Snapshot 1 regarding FRET Smart Cities. Fine. So recently, Commerce Ministry has unveiled plans for FRET Smart Cities actually to improve the urban freight efficiency. Now you need to understand, because we have this logistics in place which have very high costs. Because of that, our products become costly, and they as and when the prices are high, the demand for that particular commodity goes low. Now to actually have the prices in place that are we have a process in place that is cost efficient to bring down the prices and increase the demand for the products. We need to have a reduction in the logistic costs, and for that we should improve our freight efficiency, and particularly in the urban area. Fine. So this is a plan of FRET Smart Cities, which was unveiled by Commerce Ministry to improve the freight efficiency, which will reduce the logistic costs. Fine. Now what about the FRET Smart Cities initiative? What is the aim? The government is actually planning to having this initiative of 75 FRET Smart Cities, which is actually India at 75. With the Republic Day, we have that India 75th Republic Day, and this is our 75 fret smart cities actually linked with that initiative. And this initiative aims to actually support 75 Indian cities in achieving fret smart status, fine, to have a very developed fret efficiency. You have a fret efficiency at the urban level, fine, and to support these 75 Indian cities to have a world-class fret transportation system, world-class fret efficiency. For that, India has launched this initiative, and this will have a logistic committee which will create an enabling environment for the formulation and implementation and monitoring progress of the city logistic plans. Now we'll have for each and every 75 of the cities in which we'll be launching this initiative of smart fret cities, we will have a city logistic plan for each city, fine. Now that plan will be implemented, formulated and monitored by this logistics committee. Then we have the identification of 10 cities. That means state government would identify 10 cities to begin with, fine. So every state government will have this provision that it has to identify 10 cities where it wants to have a developed system of fret smart cities, fine. So each state will have to identify 10 important cities for this plan. Then it will be actually maybe it will be expanded to 75 cities in the next phase for each state, fine. Then we have state level work. That means state and city governments to focus on developing the peri-urban fret centers or nighttime deliveries. That means when you have in these cities there are some problems because of this fret logistics in place. There are some important problems. That means what are the problems in place? The problems are, say for example, if you see at the data, 10% of the emissions in the transportation sector is actually from the fret. Fine, 10% of the total emissions from the transportation sector is actually from the urban fret. Fine, and you also need to know 21% of the total road fatalities in 2019 was actually due to heavy duty vehicles. Now you are seeing it has a huge huge emissions as well as huge road fatalities are because of this fret transportation system. Now you need to also understand we have to get out of these problematic situations wherein this particular fret logistic system will create a lot of emissions and even road fatalities. For that we have nighttime deliveries. For that we have we have to develop some truck routes, different truck routes from developed truck routes, and we have to also develop peri-urban fret centers, that is outside and adjacent to the urban areas. And we have to also use intelligent transportation system and modern technology and promote electrification. Because of the emissions, we have to promote electrification of the urban fret. Okay, so why is this important? This is important because you need to know that the demand for urban fret movement is estimated to grow by 140% by 2030. So it will have an exponential increase in its demand, for the fret, for the urban fret movement. Also, you need to know that e-commerce market is expected to be worth 11 lakh crores by 2022. So fine, so it will have a huge impact on the overall development of the country. Fine, so this is an important initiative by the government. What are the benefits of this important fret smart cities? Now the benefits is, it can affect the economic competitiveness of the city. When the city will have this smart fret corridor and these important logistics in place, then it will increase its economic competitiveness. Fine. Also, it will lower the emissions, it will improve the public health, it will improve the road safety, and it will also bring down the traffic because we'll have nighttime deliveries in place, and then it will also create some jobs, fine, within the city. Also at the national level, if you look at the national level, will also improve our performance in the LPI. And what is LPI? LPI is Logistics Performance Index. And this is your Logistics Performance Index. It is actually given by the World Bank. And in this logistics performance index, we get the ranking of all the countries in the world, almost all the countries in the world, in terms of their logistical infrastructure. And now there are 6 important dimensions in this LPI index. Number 1 being the customs, and then the infrastructure, then international shipments, then logistics competence, then we have tracking and tracing, and timeliness, if the things are delivered on time. Now, these are the 6 important dimensions of LPI, and in this LPI, Germany is at number 1 according to year 2018. Germany has an highest score for this important logistics performance index, and India is down at 40, I guess. Okay, so this was your LPI. What is the need for these smart cities? Need for these smart fret cities, I already told you that emissions are, because of 10% emissions are from this particular sector, 21% fatalities are from this particular sector, road fatalities, and e-commerce is going to be worth 11 lakh crore by 2022, and even the demand is going to increase by 140%. Now let's look at the snapshot 2 regarding NIPUN Bharat program, a very innovative program launched by Union Minister of Education, and he virtually launched this program NIPUN, which in fact means National Initiative for Proficiency in Reading with Understanding and Numeracy. So it was a national initiative for proficiency in reading with understanding and numeracy, that is NIPUN Bharat. So what is the vision of the mission? The vision of the mission is to create an enabling environment to ensure universal acquisition of foundational literacy and numeracy. That means FLN. What is FLN? It means foundational literacy and numeracy. By 2027, to 26-27, we have this plan in place that every child in India achieves the desired learning learning in reading, writing, and numeracy, and we need to do this by not later than grade 3. Fine. So by not later than grade 5. So we need to have our children. We need our children to have a desired learning competence in reading, writing, and numeracy, at the end of grade 3 and not later than grade 5. So we need to actually develop our children's competence in these particular reading, writing, and numeracy skills. And for that, we have this NIPUN Bharat program. Okay. Now, what is this FLN mission? That is Foundational Literacy and Numeracy, FLN mission. The mission has been launched under the aegis of a central sponsored scheme, that is Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan. So we have this Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan. Under this Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan, which was a central sponsored scheme, we have under this the mission FLN, which is also in line with the National Education Policy 2020. What is the current status? According to Annual Status Education Report ASER, which was released in January 2020, at least 25% of school children in the 4 to 8 age group do not have age appropriate cognitive and numeracy skills. This is an important data. That means at least 25% of the school children which are under this age group from 4 to 8 do not have age appropriate skills, do not have age appropriate cognitive skills, do not have age appropriate numeracy skills. Fine. That means for the development of these skills, we need some program in place, and that is your FLN mission. So what are the features of the program? The features of the program is, number 1, foundational skills. We need to give them the foundational skills, literacy skills, numeracy skills. It will enable to keep the children in the class and thereby reducing the dropout rates in the country. Also, there are lakshas. Fine. There are some targets in place that by this year, that is 26-27, each state has to achieve some year-wise outcomes, year-wise targets, which are considered as lakshas, which are the learning goals of the mission. Then we have learning assessment. That means the mission aims to to actually have the early identification of learning gaps. That means children, if they have a learning gap, if their skills are not age appropriate, then we need to identify it first, and then we need to intervene and get them connected to some important and refer to some specialists regarding that particular thing. Then we have pedagogy for creating an inclusive environment, inclusive classroom. There was a question asked to a very leading entrepreneur of the world, Elon Musk, and the questioner told him, how do we actually increase the education in the world? And the answer was, you need to make learning as good as games, because when our children play games, we do not need to tell them that you should play games for this much hours in the day. They just do it because they love it. Likewise, we need to make this educational experience so important and so interactive and so attractive to the students, to the children, so that we do not need to tell them that you should study. They should do it on their own. So that is creating an inclusive environment, toy-based pedagogy, experimental learning, fine, that will give them the interaction and that will actually have the attractive capacity to actually attract these students. Then we have empowering teachers. That is, we need to also empower teachers, and NCERT has already designed an innovative program for that. That is Nishtha. Nishtha is National Initiative for School Heads and Teachers. Fine, National Initiative for School Heads and Teachers, holistic advancement. In this particular Nishtha program, the teachers are trained. They are actually given some important tools so that they have an innovative, integrated, teaching experience. Okay, so then we have school preparation module. School preparation module is essentially instruction at the beginning of the class, which is designed to bolster child's pre-literacy, pre-numeracy, cognitive and social skills. Fine. So school preparation module is actually given because we want to increase the pre-literacy and pre-numeracy cognitive skills of the child. That means before he is enrolled in the official grades and official classes in the school, we need to give him some school preparation module. Fine. So we have a 3 months play-based school preparation module in which will give him the cognitive skills, the social skills, pre-literacy and pre-numeracy before he starts the formal education. Then we have Diksha. Diksha is for FLN and Holistic Progress Card. What is this? Using digital infrastructure for school education. That is your Diksha, digital infrastructure for school education. It enables student learning, from explanation videos, from interactive assessments, from worksheets, from reading materials. This is your digital infrastructure for school education program. Also, we have holistic development of the child. For in this particular holistic development, we need the child to have overall development and holistic development in different domains of development, and that will be reflected in holistic progress card. Fine, we'll have a holistic progress card, whether the child is holistically developing or not. Then we have implementation mechanism from monitoring framework. So what is the implementation mechanism and the monitoring framework for that? We will have in place for implementation a 5-tier implementation mechanism for this mission. That means first we have a policy at the national level, and then we have state level targets and district, then block, and then school level. So from national level to state level to district level to block level and then to the school level. So this will be the implementation mechanism. For a monitoring framework, we'll have the IT based solutions, which will include field level child-wise monitoring, in which will be essentially of 2 types. Annual monitoring surveys will be done and concurrent monitoring surveys will be done at that point. So this is your FLN mission and features of it. Then we have the image of the day regarding solar flare. In this solar flare, we recently saw this solar flare. It was an X1 class of solar flare. And what is an X1 class of solar flare? It is a sun event. It was actually seen in the upper right limb of the sun, and this particular solar flare was one of the biggest and brightest solar flares that we have witnessed. Fine. So solar flares, we actually categorize them into A, B, C, M or X. Fine. So we have A category, B, C, M or X category, wherein A category is actually the smallest of the solar flares and X is the brightest and the largest of the solar flares. Fine. So what are these solar flares? And this particular solar flare that we are discussing right now, it was an X1 class, that is one of the brightest and largest solar flares that we have witnessed. Okay, so what are these solar flares? It is an intense burst of radiation coming from the release of magnetic energy associated with the sunspots. Fine, we study it in the geography that it is the immense burst of energy that actually is released from that releases, because of the magnetic energy is released, which is associated with the sunspots. Now we have the primary method for monitoring these solar flares, and for that we have X-rays and optical light. Because of that, we actually monitor these solar flares, and these flare sites, in these sites where the solar flares happen, these are, we actually detect them through optical light or X-rays because they actually release a lot of electrons and protons or heavier particles are accelerated in these places. So that becomes important for your discussion of geography. सोलर फ्लेयर के बाद हमारे पास है टर्म्स एंड कॉन्सेप्ट्स एंड फर्स्ट इंपॉर्टेंट फैक्ट इज प्रोजेक्ट बोल्ड. So Project Bold was started with KVIC, that is Khadi and Village Industries Commission. It launched a program known as Bold, and Bold means bamboo oasis on lands in drought. Bamboo oasis on lands in drought. That means the drought lands will actually have a bamboo oasis. We need to have a green patch of bamboos in these drought lands. Fine, that is your Bold. So under this project, we have planted 5,000 saplings of special bamboo species. And what are these special bamboo species? Bambusa tulda, and we have Bambusa polymorpha, and we have taken it from Assam. Okay, now these 5,000 saplings of special bamboo species have been planted over 16 acres of vacant arid Gram Panchayat village that is known as Nichla Mandwa in Rajasthan. So we have a Gram Panchayat land village in Nichla Manda in Rajasthan. In this Nichla Mandwa village, we have planted 5,000 special bamboo species. Fine. It is the first of its kind exercise in India, and it seeks to create a bamboo-based green patch. Fine. So we'll have a bamboo-based green patch like this in arid and semi-arid land zones. Fine. So it has been launched by KVIC's Khadi Bamboo Festival. So in this Khadi Bamboo Festival, which was actually to celebrate 75 years of independence, by the name of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. So at this particular event, we launched this project board of, the KVIC has launched this project board as part of this Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, the Khadi Bamboo Festival. So then we have Harit Dhara, and recently Indian Council of Agricultural Research, ICAR has developed an antimethogenic feed supplement, Harit Dhara, shortly known as HD. So what is antimethogenic feed supplement? We know that the bovines and sheep, when we give them food, and they actually emit methane, which is not good for the environment. So we have to reduce these methane emissions from these bovines and sheep. So now when we give them feed, let's change that feed into an antimethogenic feed supplement that is known as Harit Dhara. And now if we give this Harit Dhara to these bovines and sheep, it was actually told it will bring down the emissions by 17 to 20%. It will also lead to higher milk production, and it will also give some body weight gain to the bovines and sheep. Fine. So this is your HD Harit Dhara, which is an antimethogenic feed supplement. So HD actually acts by decreasing the population of protozoa microbes in the rumen. Rumen, there is a stomach compartment, and in that rumen, this is where the thing happens, and we have the methane emissions. Now HD, the feed, when it goes down to the rumen, therein we have some protozoa microbes, and these protozoa microbes are responsible for the formation of methane, and which leads to the methane emissions from these bovines. But now if we have HD, that is Harit Dhara, when it goes down to the rumen, to the stomach compartment, it decreases the population of these protozoa microbes in the rumen, thereby actually having this low emission facility. Then we have HD that is Harit Dhara, has been prepared using tannin-rich plant-based sources. So it has been prepared from tannin-rich plant-based sources. A plant-based source, and particularly the tropical plants that contain tannins and bitter and astringent chemical compounds. These are known as the suppressors and removals of protozoa from the rumen. So that is your Harit Dhara. Then we have special purpose acquisition companies, SPACs or SPACs. So SPACs are set up by a particular, these are actually a listed shell companies, and they SPACs, their sole purpose, they don't have a particular production in place, they don't have a commercial business. SPACs are just shell companies which are listed. They are shortly known as listed shells. Fine. So special purpose acquisition companies, that is these listed shell companies, what they do is they do not actually carry out the commercial business. They just take the money, they just raise some capital, raise some money from initial public offering, and then that money is used for acquiring a particular existing private company, for acquiring a particular startup, for acquiring a particular unlisted company. So this SPAC is actually used to raise capital, and that capital is used then to acquire another private companies. Now you might ask, sir, if the company has no commercial business, why would people invest in that company? How will it raise the capital by initial public offering? The answer to that question is because of the people behind that SPAC. They have a full-on profile and they have some public influence, because they are at the back of the SPAC, because of those names that are at the back of the SPAC. Because of that, the people invest in the SPAC, and that SPAC uses that money to acquire some companies. Fine. So India currently does not allow SPACs to raise money in India through initial public offering. But recently what happened is SPACs set up by Indian sponsors. No, now Indian sponsors are at the back of SPAC. Fine. Now SPAC, which was set up by Indian sponsors, are expected to raise close to $1 billion through initial public offering in US stock market. So this is happening for the first time when an Indian sponsored SPAC is actually close to raise $1 billion of $1 billion US dollars through initial public offering from United States stock market. Fine. So that was in news recently. Now let's see what are the editorials of the day. The first important editorial is leaders need to display both grit and grace to beat the crisis. We have seen the crisis of whether it be of COVID-19 or other such crisis in the future as well. We have WHO has told us, WHO's panel, independent panel for pandemic preparedness and response. This was an independent panel for pandemic preparedness and response. It has actually maintained that in this particular crisis, it was actually the result of a great leadership failure in the world. So we have seen how the leadership has collapsed in the world, and because of that leadership collapse, because of that colossal leadership failure, we have seen that our crisis has attained the heights which we never imagined. So now, to manage the crisis, effectively manage the crisis, we need to highlight the importance of leadership. And this is the article for that. You need to read this article for the importance of leadership, in effective crisis management, how we need to identify some traits in leadership. What are the features of leadership? What are the characteristics of a leader? He needs to have some grit, he needs to have some grace, he needs to have high level of resilience, he needs to have communication skills, empathy, he needs to invest in meaningful relationships, and there are leveraging social capability and credibility. These are some traits of leadership. You can get this from the article, from the editorial. Then we have evolution of India's pragmatic policy on foreign aid. This was an important editorial, and this editorial is regarding the love-hate relationship of India with the foreign aid. India has sometimes taken a lot of foreign aid, and then India has actually hated taking foreign aids, because it actually India, whenever we take a foreign aid from the other country, we cannot dictate the terms with the donor. That means the country that is giving us money, we cannot dictate any terms with the donor. Fine. Because of that, it compromises the foreign policy, compromises the sovereignty, and that is the reason why India has stopped taking foreign aid. And now till 2003, India used to have this love-hate relationship, with accepting foreign aid. But after 2003, India made it clear to the world that we would no longer accept any aid, any tide aid, we call it. And now India has a stand that India will only accept aid which is actually through non-governmental organizations, which actually through United Nations or multilateral institutions. This is actually preferred in India, not the aid that we used to take before 2003. Now in 2008, a position paper was again prepared, which gives the parameters of India's policy on receiving foreign aid. What is the India's policy in receiving foreign aid? That India will know is the policy is actually India is no longer reliant on external assistance or foreign aid. We do not want foreign aid for our gross capital formation. We do not want foreign aid, because it will actually compromise our foreign policy. It will have us, the country that is giving this aid will have a substantial control on our policies. We do not want that. So that is India's evolution of foreign aid policy. Why you should read this article? To understand India's this evolution of foreign aid and its underlying reason, and to know about tide aid and how it hamper India's sovereignty, how it will hamper India's sovereignty. Tide aid, when you give aid and you have some objectives behind that particular process, and to understand the present status of India's way of accepting aid. So this is your editorial. Then we have zoonotic diseases and a neglect. Now zoonotic diseases, we have seen there's an increase in the zoonotic diseases from past few years. Now this COVID-19 is again a zoonotic disease. What is a zoonotic disease? A disease which has animal origins. Fine. Now why we have seen that among these infectious diseases that we have, 75% of infectious diseases come under the category of emerging infectious diseases. Fine. That means these are so dangerous infectious diseases that neither we are prepared for it nor our immune system is fully prepared for it. Fine. So despite repeated warnings about the possibility of zoonotic diseases causing a large-scale disruption in human lives, we have been very, very unfortunate that our policymakers, our resource allocators have failed to give any support for this cause. Fine. So this has led, this has actually done an increase, a sporadic increase in the zoonotic diseases has been because of the ongoing abuse of the nature. When you go to the environment and nature and you abuse it and you exploit it, and then these diseases from the animal origin will actually cause a large-scale disruption in the country. Now, we need a comprehensive approach to actually deal with this crisis, recognized by One Health approach. What is this One Health approach? It is something like this. One Health approach, let me show you. Just give me a second. Here. So in this One Health approach, what we have actually is, we will have this healthy people, process of healthy people. Fine. That means on one side, we need to have a healthy population of humans and healthy environment. We need our environment to be healthy as well. And then we have healthy animals. So of all this encompassing, health initiative is actually known as One Health Initiative. One Health Initiative in which we have actually to be considered the health of the people as well as environment and animals as well. Fine. So this is your One Health Initiative. Why you should read this article? To get an overview of how zoonotic diseases have impacted humankind, and then to understand the reasons for increase in scale and spread of the same, how it has increased, how the scale has increased, how the spread has increased, and to know the possible steps should be taken, fine, to mitigate this crisis. Then we have the case study of the day, and the case study is regarding a social leader in Eriteria. And where is this Eriteria? Let's look at the map. Here we have Eriteria. Here, Eriteria, it is in Africa, and in Africa we have this Eriteria. It is on the eastern side of Sudan, and on the southern side there is Ethiopia, and in the southeastern side we have Djibouti, and on here in the eastern side we have the Red Sea. So Eriteria, with the capital of Asmara, we have seen a very important development there. we have seen a social leader of Eriteria has combated desertification. There was a rugged terrain, and it has converted this rugged terrain into an oasis, with different agricultural products being used there. Fine. So that is what is the background of this news. Now, methods deployed. What has he done? He has created check dams. He has actually has an innovated usage of land by creating strips of land. Let me show you how he has done that. Say, for example, here we have it. So he has created this check dam. It will reduce the velocity of the water, as well as have some water that can be diverted to the agricultural areas. And then we have innovative usage of land. He has created some strips of land on that bench terraces, and he has planted more than 10,000 seedlings of trees in that arid zone. And then underground recharge water. For that, he has underground water retention structures, which will actually recharge the underground water. And then for the better distribution, he has pumping mechanism to actually distribute the water along the plot, along this deserted plot. Fine. So what are the lessons to be learned? With increasing issues like land degradation and desertification of land in India, it is important to learn the global best practices to combat desertification. Now, how can you link this article with general studies or environment? It has a close-up connection with Bonn Challenge, so that is the Bonn Convention, and the United Nations Convention to combat desertification. This was your Gazette for today. Thank you so much for watching. Please share this video and subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon. Thank you all of you. God bless you. Bye-bye.